In this video, we'll be looking at a round of storm systems that will affect a lot of the country. Significant snow will be an issue, with some places receiving over a foot. Also, in parts of the south, ice will be a threat with significant accumulations possible. After that, we'll be looking at the severe weather threat. Large hail, damaging winds, and even a few tornadoes are not out of the question. Let's get into all the specifics. Hello everybody, Will here, back again to talk about the weather, and we got a lot to talk about today, a lot of active weather going on. And first things first, we're going to start with today's severe weather threat. So we currently have a slight risk from northeast Texas up through parts of Oklahoma and northwest Arkansas up into southern Missouri. And in this area, there's a 5% chance of tornadoes, meaning the threat isn't too high, but there is still potential for a couple of tornadoes. Cities like Denton, Texas, Fort Smith, Arkansas, Fayetteville, Jonesboro, and Springdale, Arkansas are all in this risk. But the bigger threat will be damaging wind gusts and even large hail in some spots. The main timing for this will be this afternoon into the overnight, and I will show you guys the exact timing in just a second. But first, we'll look at tomorrow's severe weather outlook as well. We have a slight risk in place for the northern half of Mississippi up through parts of Alabama, Tennessee, and eastern Arkansas. And these areas, there's also a 5% tornado risk. Places like Evansville, Owensboro, Tupelo, Mississippi, all of these places need to keep an eye on this tomorrow. Once again, it's not a huge threat, but a couple tornadoes are possible. The main threat for tomorrow's event will be damaging winds. However, there is also a low-end hail threat. Alright, so now we'll take a look at timing. This is for this afternoon at 1 p.m. And there's not a whole lot going on. We got some showers and thunderstorms over in Alabama and Mississippi. But our main area of development later this evening will be right in here. So as we go through the afternoon, it's pretty quiet, and then we start getting some showers and thunderstorm development in central Texas around 7 p.m. And as we go into the overnight hours, these start to strengthen with the instability in place. And then by about midnight, we have some isolated storms going with a wind threat and a tornado threat right through central Oklahoma down into northeast Texas. And as we go into the overnight hours, these push off to the northwest, bringing a wind, hail, and isolated tornado threat up into Arkansas and parts of Missouri. And as we get into the daybreak hours, it starts to move out of here and weakens. And then our threat starts to shift to the east a bit. So picking up here Tuesday at 10 a.m., it's pretty quiet. There's some showers and thunderstorms ongoing in Arkansas from those weakening storms from the previous day. As we go into the afternoon, instability will increase and storms will start to develop later in the day into the evening. And late tomorrow night, you can see this broken line of storms forming with a damaging wind, hail, and isolated tornado threat. As we go into the early morning on Wednesday, it finally starts to get out of here. So if we look at the significant tornado parameters, it's basically how favorable conditions are for a tornado, not necessarily the chance of a tornado happening. And as we get into the afternoon and evening, you can see these numbers start to go up across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And then as these storms get to forming overnight, it starts to go up a little bit in parts of western Arkansas and goes up into southern Missouri. These values aren't off the chart, but it does suggest that conditions are favorable for an isolated tornado or two here and there. And then tomorrow, as it shifts to the east, and you can see these two areas where those higher tornado probabilities are, down in Illinois and Kentucky, as well as parts of Indiana, and then also another area down in parts of Mississippi. And these are the two areas that will be most favorable for tornadoes. If you're in this area in the middle, don't discount it. It's still possible. It's just not as likely. Alright, so now we'll switch to the bigger picture and take a look at the country, what's currently going on now. Those showers and thunderstorms are ongoing across parts of the south, where moisture is increasing ahead of the severe weather threat down there. Meanwhile, across parts of the north, all the way over to the west coast, we got this area of light to moderate snow. The snow is a bit heavier over here in parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin. There's a little bit of a heavier band that's set up, and it's dropping some heavier accumulations. But this is our first of two storms, and as you can see as we go through later today, moisture starts increasing across parts of the south up into the Ohio Valley. We got those severe storms down here, and up here we got heavy rain, possibly some flooding. And then to the north of that, across parts of Iowa up into the Great Lakes, we got a little area of ice, and then to the north of that we got an area of accumulating snow. And this is for tomorrow at 9 a.m. And then as we go into the afternoon, that area of freezing rain and snow starts to intensify a bit. And then we still got that heavy rain ongoing down in the Ohio Valley, especially right in this area. Places in these areas can see anywhere from 4 to 5 inches of rain after both of these storms are done. Meanwhile, on the west coast, we got a little disturbance, bringing some snow to the Sierra Nevadas, as well as some rain to parts of the San Joaquin Valley. As we get into Tuesday afternoon into the evening, the storm starts to move offshore. We still got some areas of heavy rain from the south up into the mid-Atlantic, and a little bit of rain up in the northeast, but our main system is starting to move offshore. But if we look back to the west, our second storm is starting to develop. We got an area of low pressure that is strengthening, and this area of freezing rain breaks out across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, areas where that severe weather is expected today. And that's because we got the Arctic high pressure building to the south, which is bringing cold air down, but we also have a ridge of high pressure in the southeast, which is keeping those warm temperatures in place. So let me draw a little diagram here to help explain this. So basically, this line here is ground level, and this is the freezing line right here. So up here we got warm air, but down here underneath this line we got temperatures below freezing. So the snow falls and it melts in this area that's above freezing, and then as it falls it gets below that freezing layer and it sticks to the ground on contact as freezing rain. And that's what's happening a lot in this area. And some of these areas can see a lot of freezing rain. So the freezing rain really starts Wednesday morning into the afternoon, and then it slides to the northeast. And then we get a second surge of moisture on the southwest side, which causes the storm to keep going. So as we get into Thursday, this freezing rain continues to fall across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, up into Missouri. And as the storm continues to strengthen and move to the north on Thursday, snow starts to break out across parts of the Ohio Valley up into the northeast. This is very similar to a few setups we've had in the last few weeks. We have this area of snow on the northern side, we got rain and possibly severe weather on the south, and then in the middle we have an ice storm. And that has been the common theme lately. And as we go into early Friday morning, this heavy snow expands into parts of the northeast. There's going to be a very narrow difference from who sees freezing rain and who sees snow and who sees rain. You got Philadelphia receiving rain. You got New York City getting ice, sleet, freezing rain, a little bit of everything. And you got Boston and places to the north possibly getting heavy snow. Keep in mind, small shifts in the storm system could cause big changes and impacts. But overall, models are in pretty good agreement that this is where it's going to happen. And if I switch over to the GFS model real quick, it has the same idea, a little bit more to the north, but it still has that idea of Philadelphia mostly getting rain, New York City kind of getting a mixed bag of everything, and then Boston getting more sleet and snow. Meanwhile, down here, flooding rain is possible. We could be getting a few inches in some spots. And then finally, as we go into the weekend and this moves offshore, things quiet down a bit. But right after that, as we get into Sunday, into Monday, another storm system develops, and the GFS wants to bring snow to parts of the south possibly. It's kind of been all over the place with this storm, but it's something to watch. And it wants to bring this area of snow into parts of the mid-Atlantic up into the northeast with another potential snowstorm. I won't get into that one too much right now because that is farther out, but we got to deal with these two storms first. But we'll start to cover that one as things get a little bit closer and as models come into more agreement. First, we'll look at the ice impacts. The hardest areas that are going to get hit are parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. The higher elevations up here in the Ozark Mountains could see up to an inch of ice possibly. And then down into Oklahoma and northeast Texas, not as much, but there could be anywhere from a glaze to maybe even half an inch of ice in isolated spots, enough to cause travel issues and isolated power outages. But I think the biggest threat is going to be in northern Arkansas and southern Missouri in these higher elevations. I think travel issues are going to be pretty significant, and I also think the power outages could be likely in some spots. There's also going to be a strip of ice in the Ohio Valley, however not as much. There could be some isolated spots of a quarter inch to possibly up to a half inch in spots, and this goes up into the northeast. It's pretty similar to what we've been having lately with these winter storms, with ice and then snow just to the north of that. And then up in the northeast, the swath of ice goes through Pennsylvania up into Connecticut and Rhode Island, bringing anywhere from a quarter to possibly 3/4 of an inch in some of the higher spots. But keep in mind, just because it's showing an inch of ice in some spots, some of it's going to melt. If it's raining really hard, and temperatures are 31 degrees, 30 degrees, it's not going to stick immediately. Some of it's going to wash away, and some of these totals could be a little bit lower. However, there's still enough ice to cause impacts, potentially significant in some spots. And now we'll take a look at snow totals. Quite a bit for a lot of areas. This swath up here is from this first storm, and it could bring anywhere from half a foot to over a foot of snow in a lot of areas, especially across parts of Minnesota up into Wisconsin. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you guys are probably going to get over a foot of snow, and several other areas up there. Meanwhile, our second storm down here isn't going to bring as much snow, but there could be a swath of anywhere from 1 to 4 inches with locally higher amounts. And as the second system moves to the northeast, it strengthens a bit, it gets some more moisture and cold air going, and it cranks out some higher snow totals. Parts of upstate New York, as well as Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, you guys could all get anywhere from 7 inches to over a foot of snow potentially. And we're on the European model right now, so if we go over and look at the GFS, although it's a little bit different, it still gets that general idea of heavier snow just to the north of Pennsylvania and Connecticut and Rhode Island. Up here in New York State, Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire, and also parts of Maine, of course, it has them all getting over a foot of snow. It does also have this swath back here a little bit heavier. It wants to give parts of Illinois and Indiana, as well as parts of northern Ohio, a few more inches of snow. And finally, one last thing we'll talk about is the blast of cold air. Following these storms, there's going to be a lot of cold air coming in. This white line here, where it goes from dark purple to white, is where temperatures are below zero. Anywhere north of this line is below 0 degrees. And as we go later into this week, that cold air starts to dive to the south. North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, you guys are all well below freezing. And as we go later into the week, into the weekend, it dives to the south a bit more. It wants to bring temperatures below zero, possibly as far south as Ohio, and then up to the northeast, temperatures in the single digits and teens are a good bet. And finally, as we go into the weekend, there's a possibility of another reinforcing shot of cold air across much of the north and central United States. This is a bit farther out though, so confidence is a bit lower. But signals are all pointing to below average temperatures for much of the eastern United States. Anyways, that's all I got for today's video. We got that severe weather threat going on today and tomorrow, and then we have an ice storm setting up across parts of the south into the Ohio Valley, as well as a snowstorm to the north of that up into the northeast, and also the northern United States will be getting some heavy snow in the next couple days. If you guys are still with me here, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click that like button and subscribe if you're new. I got big things coming for the channel. As we get more into severe weather season, I hope to start live streaming big events and providing coverage. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that, and also my updates. I'll post some more updates on this storm as it's ongoing and see what happens. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.